This is Georgia. Her and I have been working together for the past few months to tackle some issues she's had with her health and her weight. I will let her tell you a little more about herself and how she went from kind of the standard American diet to a slightly better whole food plant-based diet to a pristine whole food plant-based diet, and the challenges that she took along the way, as well as what she's learned in the process, particularly around those social navigation aspects. So, hi Georgia.
Hi. I'm 63 years old. I'm a mother of two and a grandmother of three. I'm a legal assistant for my husband's law office, and I live in North Georgia.
Do you mind telling us what your typical diet consisted of prior to starting a whole food plant-based lifestyle?
Basically, your good old Southern diet. Lots of fried foods and probably more fried foods and starches than veggies. But I started trying to do more whole food plant-based probably in 2017. Was doing most of it on my own until I found you. So, and we're working on making it much better. Whole food plant-based.
Yep. Immediately prior to working together, Georgia enjoyed a lot of treats, particularly sweets and unhealthy snacks, as she referred to them. She mentioned that she was attempting to do Dr. McDougall's 50-50 plate, where you've got that 50% of your plate as starches and 50% of the plate as like non-starchy veggies. And a lot of people come to me because they find that that's just not helpful, and some people's bodies need something slightly different. So we were able to tweak Georgia's diet accordingly, and it really didn't take much, just a few slight changes here and there to get her back on track, and we'll find out how much weight she's lost in a bit. What was your primary motivation behind making the plant-based transition, and what results were you hoping to achieve?
Well, my cholesterol has traditionally been high, and the doctors have put me on medication, which I would truly like to be off of. And my family has a history of health issues, cancers, and those kinds of things, which to my mind are very much food related. And so I want to be a good example for my family and hopefully convince some of them to make some changes.
Oh, absolutely. I feel like that's everybody's endeavor, really. So overall, Georgia was really hoping to lose about 30 pounds on this healthful diet, as well as sustain that weight loss and focus more on health and making sure she really had that peace of mind that she was doing the right thing for her body and keeping her health at the primary concern. So many people go on these like crash diets or fad diets, and they end up causing themselves more harm than good in the long term, when really we should be focusing on what we're doing to our bodies each and every day, as opposed to just, oh, I really want to fit in this wedding dress, or I need to go on vacation and I really want to wear this bikini or something, so I'm going to eat a certain way for a few months and then go back to my old diet. But that's just not the way that our bodies work. Unfortunately, it's the way that our society works. But we want to maintain our DNA function and repair and all of those wonderful autophagy mechanisms and all the different things that go into keeping our cells very healthy and resilient year after year after year. These yo-yo diets and going back and forth with your metabolism and your weight is just causing you so much more damage to your mitochondria and the different aspects at the cellular level. So it's important to keep, an open mind around the sustainability factor, and Georgia has done a wonderful job at that. The other thing I wanted to mention was that Georgia really wanted to overcome her ability to utilize food as fuel, as opposed to using it for something like comfort or reducing stress or even celebratory aspects, using it for entertainment. We do this so much in our society, and it's just become like the norm, and it's anticipated, like, oh, I'm super stressed, so I'm going to go find some chocolate or something. It's considered very casual in our environment, and it's unfortunate because we really should be yearning for food to utilize as fuel, as opposed to reaching for something outside of ourselves by means of achieving some sort of mental equilibrium, but that can happen in other ways. You don't have to utilize food. It's important to maintain other pillars of health to make sure that you're not reaching for food in these types of situations. What does a typical day's worth of meals look like today?
For breakfast, I will usually have something savory, like say the savory oats, or I'll saute some vegetables. Find that I'm not as much wanting this something sweeter as like the oats and the berries for breakfast. My lunch is almost always a large salad with some beans, small serving of grain, and balsamic vinegar. For dinner, soups. I found I really love soups for dinner.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. How long did it take you to start preferring savory breakfast as opposed to sweet?
I found as soon as you introduced me to the making the savory oats in the crock pot, the first time I tried it, I'm like, oh, I like this. So and occasionally I'll have the oats with berries, but typically I just prefer the savory.
Okay. I was just curious because so many people I speak with are really thrown off by the idea of eating something savory for breakfast. So I'm really glad that you caught on to that so fast and enjoyed it.
In the past, I would have oats and I would have like a side of a steamed vegetable or something like that. So it wasn't a totally new concept for me. But the total savory breakfast, yeah, I like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are so many reasons to eat savory foods for breakfast as opposed to sweet. Number one being the insulin response that you're going to maintain at a lower level throughout the day if you incorporate savory foods as opposed to sweet foods when you first break your fast. But also, it's so easy to gravitate towards sweet foods in the morning. I want to know I'm hungry, and you always know you're hungry if you can start your day off with vegetables, particularly raw vegetables in my case. So, do you enjoy the food? Are you finding the meals satisfying?
Oh, yes, I enjoy the foods very much. In fact, I look forward to them.
Okay, and you're feeling full from meal to meal? You're not like starving at any point in time or feeling deprived?
No, I'm not starving at all. No, I have plenty.
Okay. What noticeable health changes have you experienced thus far?
My cholesterol has definitely lowered, which is a very good thing, very positive thing. I'm sleeping better. I've started incorporating some yoga and some strength training in my exercise routine, which I had not been doing very much of in the past. It had been mostly walking on a treadmill or a tread climber is what I had been doing in the past. So.
Mm-hmm. Georgia has also lost a total of 19 pounds thus far, and she didn't have a ton of weight to lose, so that's really impressive. This is really possible at any age if you're giving your body the proper materials. So some other things that she's been able to accomplish, and you're being super modest, by the way, because there's a whole list. She's increased her energy dramatically. Like she mentioned, her strength training has increased, her yoga, but also this woman goes on 6.5-mile hikes with her husband and their friends, and this is a weekly venture. It's really incredible to see that kind of regularity at her age, for sure. She also mentions that she has a very speedy recovery from illnesses, and when she does do some heavy strength training workouts, she finds that her muscles are not sore for very long. But for her illnesses, and this is so pertinent right now in our history, to be able to recover quicker and have a less severity of symptoms when you are ill. I find that across the board with my clients when we experience some kind of sickness. And as you can tell myself, I'm going through it right now. She is no longer hungry in the mornings. So she's reduced most of her meals day to day to only 2 large meals as opposed to having those 3 somewhat smaller meals. So I think that speaks in and of itself that we don't have to gravitate towards this ideal of 3 meals per day if we're really not that hungry. You can eat plant-based foods, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, or just breakfast and dinner, or whatever you choose, and be completely satiated from one day to the next. If you find yourself struggling with this transition or losing those excess pounds, make sure you click my link in the description box below and schedule a free 45-minute consultation with me so we can get started on your health journey. I also wanted to discuss the cholesterol aspect a little bit because this was a really big deal to Georgia. She does not want to be on medication, and she has done a lot of research to try to determine why on earth her cholesterol is still a little bit higher than she would desire after being on such a pristine plan for so many months. And I've had clients in the past that were her age who have had similar problems. And it's very frustrating. But I think if we put into perspective the entire picture of the individual, she exercises regularly. She does not eat meat or dairy or eggs of any shape or form. She does not eat processed foods. She doesn't have a ton of oil and refined sugar in her diet. So really, there's nothing that you could pinpoint from an exogenous point that would be causing an influx in her cholesterol. But she does not consume a lot of nuts and seeds at the moment, so there might be an upregulation of that cholesterol to try to offset this. Or it could just be that this is her body's happy equilibrium and her balance point, and this is what she's supposed to do and how she's supposed to live. Sometimes these biomarkers aren't as telling as we would like them to be, and they haven't really caught up with our knowledge around what in fact these numbers might entail. At the moment, Georgia is also looking into some telehealth doctors to help better explain to her why this is happening and let her know that she can safely get off this medication. But for now, she's still taking it. There's also other tests that she'll be doing in the meantime to make sure like the calcification in her arteries is okay and such, so they can have a more well-rounded picture of what's going on with her arteries and whether or not this cholesterol is truly troublesome. What were the major challenges taking on this transition thus far?
Well, I had to learn about intermittent fasting and increasing my fasting window. Didn't know a lot about that. And learning how important the prepping food was in having things available for me. That was a hurdle in itself, and learning how to do that and get that in my schedule, because sometimes my schedule can be rather busy. I've been very pleasantly surprised that the small tweaks you had me do had a much bigger effect than I anticipated. Just in changing the oats in the morning from the regular oats and fruit to savory oats, and switching. When we first started, I was doing my salads in the evenings, and you had me do them at lunch. And that made a significant change just in the first week or two. I was very pleasantly surprised by that.
Mm-hmm. So some other challenges that Georgia experienced were like these hikes that her and her husband like to go on. Finding ways that she could bring certain, high starch foods with her to keep her energy levels where they needed to be for these extended walks were a bit of an experimental process, but eventually she got to a point where she was using things like sweet potatoes and garbanzo bean salad, as well as initially she was trying to incorporate some more processed like trail bites items. Like, what would you say those were made of?
They were called energy bites, and I made them, but they had a little bit of peanut butter, and because of the whole cholesterol issue, I'm working against myself when I add nuts and peanut butter to things if I'm also trying to work on my cholesterol. So that was a learning process. So
sure. So how are your cravings for processed and animal foods now compared to the initial weeks on the program?
Much better. I occasionally do have cravings that I deal with, but they're not nearly as intense or as often. So I think this is something that I will continue to improve and will continue to get less.
Sure. So what foods do you still crave or miss the most?
Probably peanuts and peanut butter, or nuts and peanut butter, which are, definitely things I should stay away from dealing with the whole cholesterol issue. So, and I find for me, it's better if I don't have any, so that I don't have that taste for them. So, absolutely.
And nuts and seeds are super healthful. So it's definitely a toss-up. You have to decide for yourself, people who are very susceptible to fast and easy weight gain. But when you get to a point where she's still in her transition, trying to utilize those excess fat storages that are currently still on her body. So there's no reason to take in exogenous sources of these fats. So anytime you have an excess amount of fat on your body, there's really no need to incorporate all of the nuts and seeds and things that purport that plant-based individuals need to be healthy. As soon as you get to a point where there's no more excess fat on your body, then you might try incorporating some of these things into your diet and see how it makes you feel and see what kind of changes you go through. But other than that, do your own research and make the decision for yourself, because those omega-3s are essential fatty acids. But the great thing is, if you're eating a large salad every day and trying to get at least, say, 6 to 9 cups of greens is most highly recommended, you're likely getting those fatty acids, those omega-3s that you need. And that's the other thing. You can check your DHA levels, and that's something Georgia will be doing moving forward to see if that's something that she does need to supplement into her diet and therefore reduce her cholesterol levels. Potentially. It's just a theory. How were you able to navigate the social implications of this lifestyle?
I find planning helps greatly. If we're going out to eat, I will either eat ahead of time, or I will make sure to have my own salad dressing or balsamic vinegar with me. And I tend to keep some of that in my purse regularly. Or look at the menu from the restaurant or whatever to see what they're going to have, or try to, like if it's a family function, try to make sure that I have prepared foods that I can have and share with others, so that I'm not tempted to gravitate towards something I should stay away from.
Yeah, and you've also had some serious discussions with your husband and other loved ones.
Yes.
Do you mind telling us about your situation with your family's home and staying with your sister for that duration and how that went?
Karli and I had been meeting for about a month, right at a month, when I had to be away from the office and away from meetings with Karli for 2 full weeks while we were at my parents' home to pack it up and get it ready for sale. So, of course, during that time, I took my food and everything, but that does not. Everyone else that I was around is not whole food plant-based, and so there was lots of sugary desserts and things around, lots of meat options. So lots of opportunities for me to be tempted, plus just a general stressful situation in that we were going through all of my parents' things and the memories and the things that are associated with that. So lots of opportunities of food that and lots of stress at the same time. So
she's also been able to navigate the holidays, vacations, travel, as well as dining out. So she has found a number of different strategies to keep her on track through these very complicated scenarios. Like she mentioned, she is consistently planning ahead. She always has something packed with her and ready to go. She brings several meals with her each workday to her office to make sure she has breakfast, to make sure she has lunch, and any snacks that might be in order. Initially for her hikes, like she mentioned, she was making those higher energy ball type things, but she would find herself indulging in these time and time again. So eventually she just decided, you know what, I'm not going to try to make my food look like other people's food anymore. I'm going to eat my food the way it is, the way I enjoy it. She was consistently trying to fit in, so to speak, around like holiday meals and such. She would try to make some kind of whole food plant-based dessert as opposed to having, the typical pie or ice cream or whatever it may be. But eventually she just got to a point where she's like, you know what? I don't have to bring some food to the table for myself to make myself feel like I'm part of the crowd or part of the festivities. So we don't have to use food in these manners and still be socially adept. Do you see yourself maintaining this lifestyle long term?
Oh yes. That was one of my main goals, is to have sustainability, and I think that you've helped me come up with meal plans and things that will make this very sustainable.
What advice would you give to someone considering this transition to a whole food plant-based lifestyle?
Do yourself a favor. Give it a good try, that you will not regret it.